I joined my husband's company, and when I drank his water, the clerk slapped me and screamed, "That is mine." My name is Sophie, and I am 34 years old. For 7 years I believed I had the perfect marriage. I trusted my husband completely, never questioning where he went or who he was with. But 6 months ago, something changed. The late nights became more frequent. The phone calls at odd hours multiplied, and that lingering scent of perfume on his collar that was not mine. So I did something I never thought I would do. I applied for a job at his company under my maiden name, changed my appearance, and became an ordinary employee. I wanted to see who my husband really was when I was not around. I never expected that a single sip of water from his bottle would lead to his secretary slapping me across the face and screaming, "That is mine." Before I share what happened next, I would love to know where you are watching from today. Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if stories about truth betrayal and finding your strength resonate with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Your support means everything. Now let me take you back to where it all began. For 7 years, Derek Caldwell was my whole world. We met at a mutual friend's wedding in downtown Chicago when I was 27. He was charming, attentive, and had this way of making me feel like the only woman in the room. Within a year, we were married. Within 2 years, we had bought a beautiful 4-bedroom house in Naperville, complete with a wraparound porch and a backyard big enough for the children we planned to have someday. Derek was 38, now the CEO of Caldwell Marketing, a mid-sized firm with about 150 employees. He had built that company from the ground up, starting with just 3 people in a cramped office space. I had watched him grow it into something impressive, something he was deeply proud of. And I was proud of him too. Our life looked picture perfect from the outside. 2 cars in the garage, vacations to the Bahamas every winter, dinner parties with colleagues and friends where Derek would put his arm around me and call me his rock, his everything. I worked as a freelance graphic designer from our home office. It was Derek's idea for me to leave my position at the agency where we met. He said freelancing would give me more flexibility, more freedom. At the time, it seemed thoughtful. Now I wonder if he just wanted me home, away from other people, away from other men. Every weekday followed the same routine. Derek would wake up at 6, shower dress in one of his tailored suits, and kiss me goodbye before heading to work. At noon, he would call to check in. "How is your day going, honey? Did you eat lunch? I love you." Every Friday, he brought home flowers. Roses, tulips, whatever caught his eye at the florist near his office. On weekends, he made breakfast. Pancakes on Saturdays, omelets on Sundays. He remembered how I liked my coffee. 2 sugars, splash of cream. For years, I thought this was love. I thought this was what a good marriage looked like. But looking back, I realized the signs were there long before I let myself see them. It started about 6 months ago. Small things at first. Derek began coming home later than usual, sometimes past 9 or 10 at night. "Client meetings," he would say. "This pitch is taking forever. You know how it is." I did know how it was. I had worked in marketing before. Late nights happened. Deadlines were brutal. I told myself not to worry. Then I noticed the phone. Derek had always been open with his devices. We knew each other's passwords, but suddenly his phone was always face down on the table. The screen went dark the moment I walked into the room. He started taking calls in the garage, in the backyard, anywhere I was not. He smelled different, too. Not bad, different, just different. There was a perfume that lingered on his shirt sometimes. Light floral, nothing like what I wore. When I asked about it, he laughed. Probably from a client hug, he said. "You know how people are at networking events." But then there were the showers. Derek never used to shower the moment he got home. He would kick off his shoes, pour himself a drink, and tell me about his day first. Now he went straight to the bathroom. The water would run for 20 minutes while I sat on the couch, waiting, wondering. I tried to push these thoughts away. My mother, Linda, had divorced my father when I was 12 because he had been unfaithful. I watched what that suspicion did to her, how it consumed her, how she saw betrayal everywhere, even after she left him. I swore I would never become that woman. I swore I would trust my husband until he gave me a real reason not to. Then came that Saturday night. Derek said he had a business trip to Milwaukee, a client meeting that could not wait. He packed an overnight bag, kissed me on the forehead, and told me he would be back Sunday evening. I believed him. I had no reason not to. But that night, around 8 o'clock, I was scrolling through Instagram when something caught my eye. Derek had a secondary account that he used for the company. He did not know I followed it from my own private account, one I had created just to keep up with industry trends without mixing personal and professional content. There it was, a story post, a check-in at La Fontaine, one of the most expensive restaurants in downtown Chicago. Not Milwaukee. Chicago. My hands trembled as I looked at the image. A candlelit table, 2 wine glasses, 2 plates of food. No faces, but I recognized his watch. The silver Rolex I had given him for our 5th anniversary. I did not sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence of our empty house. When Derek came home Sunday evening, he kissed me and said the meetings went well. I smiled and said I was glad. I did not ask about the restaurant. I did not confront him. I did not say a word. But from that moment on, everything changed. The following Tuesday, I met my best friend Meredith for coffee. Meredith and I had been close since college. She was a divorce attorney now, one of the best in the city. She had seen every kind of marriage fall apart, and she never sugarcoated anything. I told her everything. The late nights, the perfume, the showers, the Instagram story. She listened without interrupting, stirring her latte slowly. When I finished, she set down her spoon and looked at me with those sharp brown eyes. "You have 2 choices," she said. "You can confront him now with no evidence and watch him deny everything while deleting every trace of whatever he is hiding. Or you can find out the truth first." I asked her how. Hiring a private investigator felt extreme. Going through his phone felt like a violation of trust, ironic as that was. Meredith smiled, but there was no humor in it. "His company is hiring," she said. "I saw the listing last week. They need a graphic designer for the marketing department." My stomach dropped. She could not be serious, but she was. "Think about it," she continued. "You apply under your maiden name. Brennan. Change your hair, your makeup, your style. Derek barely looks at the new hires anyway. You could work there for weeks before he even notices you exist. And in that time, you would see everything. How he acts, who he talks to, what he does when you are not around. It was insane. It was risky. It was possibly the most reckless thing I had ever considered. But I also knew that I could not keep living in this limbo. The not knowing was destroying me. Every smile Derek gave me, I wondered if it was real. Every "I love you," I questioned if he meant it. I needed to know the truth, even if it shattered everything. That night I dyed my hair. My natural color was chestnut brown, soft and warm. I turned it black dark, as ink. I cut it shorter just past my shoulders. I pulled out a pair of thick-framed glasses I had not worn in years. I practiced speaking quieter, smiling, less becoming someone forgettable. Meredith helped me build the resume. Sophie Brennan, freelance graphic designer. References from fake companies she set up with burner phones. I applied on Wednesday. By Friday, I had an interview. The following Monday, I was hired. The morning of my first day felt surreal. I woke up before Derek, something I rarely did. I watched him sleep for a few minutes, this man I had shared a bed with for 7 years. His face was peaceful, untroubled. Whatever secrets he carried, they did not seem to haunt his dreams. He woke at 6, as always. I pretended to still be sleeping as he went through his routine. Shower. Shave. The crisp white shirt, the navy blue tie. He leaned over and kissed my forehead before leaving. "Have a good day, honey." I waited 30 minutes after his car pulled out of the driveway. Then I got up and transformed into Sophie Brennan. The black hair still startled me when I looked in the mirror. The glasses made my face look different, sharper somehow. I chose clothes I would never normally wear. A plain gray blouse, black slacks, flats instead of heels. I looked like a woman who wanted to disappear into the background. That was exactly the point. I drove Meredith's old Honda instead of my own car. My silver Audi was too recognizable. Derek had bought it for me 3 years ago, and everyone who had ever come to our house had seen it in the driveway. The drive to Caldwell Marketing took 45 minutes. The building was a modern 5-story structure with lots of glass and steel. Derek's name was not on the exterior, but his presence was everywhere inside. His vision, his leadership, his company. I had been here before for holiday parties, and company events always on Derek's arm, always introduced as his wife. Today I walked in as a stranger. The lobby was sleek and professional. A large silver logo dominated the wall behind the reception desk. A young man with carefully styled hair asked for my name and directed me to the elevators. 4th floor, he said. HR will meet you there. My heart was pounding so hard I was certain everyone could hear it. Nancy Chen greeted me at the elevator doors. She was around 45 with kind eyes and a firm handshake. She walked me through the orientation process, explaining company policies, benefits, and expectations. I nodded and smiled and tried to remember every detail, even though my mind was elsewhere. The marketing department was on the 3rd floor. Nancy led me through a maze of cubicles and glass-walled offices until we reached my assigned desk. It was in a corner near the windows, far enough from the executive offices that I would not draw attention, but close enough that I could see who came and went. "Let me introduce you to your team," Nancy said. Brian Parker was the head of the marketing department. He was around 50 with gray hair and a gentle manner. He welcomed me with a warm smile and said he hoped I would enjoy working there. Then there was Marcus, 28, with a quick laugh and an easy confidence. Leah, 31, had friendly eyes and immediately offered to show me where the good coffee was. Tommy was the youngest at 24, quiet and focused on his screen. And then there was Amber. She did not work in the marketing department exactly. Her desk was positioned right outside the executive office at the end of the hall. Derek's office. She was his personal secretary, the gatekeeper to the CEO. I noticed her immediately. It was impossible not to. Amber was 29, with long blonde hair that cascaded down her back like something from a shampoo commercial. Her makeup was flawless. Red lips, perfectly lined eyes. She wore a fitted black dress that hugged every curve and heels that added at least 4 inches to her height. She looked up as our group passed by, and for a moment our eyes met. Hers were blue and cold, assessing me with the kind of look that made it clear she had already decided I was insignificant. "That is Amber Leah," whispered to me as we continued to my desk. "She is the CEO's assistant." There was something in Leah's tone that made me pay attention. A hesitation, maybe. A warning I could not quite decode. I settled into my desk and tried to focus on the onboarding materials Nancy had given me, but my attention kept drifting to that office at the end of the hall. Derek's office. The door was closed, the blinds drawn. Around 10 that morning, Derek emerged. I saw him before he saw me. He walked with the confidence of a man who owned everything around him. His suit was perfectly tailored, his hair immaculately styled. He smiled at the employees he passed, nodding to some, offering quick greetings to others. When he reached our section, I ducked my head, pretending to be absorbed in my computer screen. My pulse was racing. I could feel his presence as he moved closer. "Good morning, everyone," he said to the room at large. "Keep up the great work." A chorus of good mornings responded. I did not look up. He passed within 10 feet of me and did not pause. Did not recognize his own wife sitting in the corner cubicle with black hair and thick glasses. He just kept walking back toward his office. Back toward Amber. I watched them interact from behind my screen. She rose from her desk as he approached her posture, straightening, her smile brightening. He said something I could not hear, and she laughed, touching her throat in that flirtatious way some women do. He leaned in close to say something else. Too close for a boss and his secretary. His hand brushed her shoulder and lingered there. My stomach turned. Then I heard it. Just a fragment of conversation as they moved toward his office. "Tonight," Derek asked. "Same place." "Of course," Amber replied. "I already made the reservation." Derek smiled at her in a way I had not seen him smile at me in months. "You are the best." They disappeared into his office together. The door closed behind them. I sat frozen at my desk, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. The words on the screen blurred. My chest felt tight, like someone was slowly squeezing the air out of me. Leah appeared at my side. "You okay, Sophie? You look a little pale." I forced myself to smile. "Just first-day nerves," I said. "Where did you say the coffee was?" The first week at Caldwell Marketing confirmed every fear I'd been trying to suppress for months. I watched. I listened. I took mental notes of everything. Derek and Amber ate lunch together at least 3 times during that first week. Not in the company cafeteria with other employees, but at restaurants nearby. I knew because Marcus mentioned it casually on Wednesday. "There goes the boss and Amber again," he said, nodding toward the window where we could see them walking side by side toward the parking garage. "Those two are always together." Leah shot him a warning look, but he just shrugged. "What everyone knows what I asked, trying to keep my voice casual." Leah hesitated. "They are just close," she said carefully. "She has worked here 3 years. He trusts her with everything." There was more to the story. I could see it in the way Leah avoided my eyes, in the way the other employees exchanged glances whenever Derek and Amber were mentioned in the same sentence. By Friday, I had gathered enough fragments to form a picture. Amber spent hours every day in Derek's office with the door closed. Sometimes I could hear laughter through the walls, her laughter high and musical, his low and pleased. She called him D. Not Mr. Caldwell like everyone else, just D, casual and intimate. When he traveled for business, she always seemed to take personal days at the same time. I checked the company calendar system using the access credentials Nancy had given me. The pattern was unmistakable. I also discovered something that made my blood run cold. The company credit card statements. As a marketing department employee, I had access to expense reports for review and design work. One afternoon, I found myself looking at receipts that went beyond standard business expenses. Dinner for 2 at a steakhouse, $340. Suite at the Palmer House Hotel, $450. Another dinner, another hotel. All coded as client entertainment. All on dates when Derek had told me he was working late or traveling for meetings. I thought about the Instagram story from La Fontaine. 2 wine glasses, 2 plates. The silver Rolex on the wrist of the man I had trusted with my life. That night, I stayed late at the office pretending to finish a project. The building emptied out gradually. By 7:30, only a handful of people remained. I needed to use the bathroom. On my way back, I passed the small conference room near Derek's office. The lights were dim, but through the frosted glass I could see shapes. 2 figures standing close together. Too close. I stopped walking. My heart hammered against my ribs. They were embracing. His arms wrapped around her waist, her head against his chest. Derek and Amber, in the office, after hours, holding each other like lovers. I backed away slowly, my hand pressed against my mouth to keep from making a sound. I made it to the bathroom and locked myself in a stall. I did not cry. I wanted to, but the tears would not come. Instead, I felt something else, something cold and hard forming in my chest. 7 years. 7 years of marriage. And this was who he really was. I called Meredith at midnight from the parking lot of a 24-hour diner. I could not go home. Could not face that house, that bed, those photographs of our wedding day hanging on the walls. She answered on the second ring. "Tell me," she said. I told her everything. The lunches, the hotel receipts, the embrace in the conference room. When I finished, there was a long silence. "You have evidence now," she finally said. "But you need more. Something concrete, undeniable. Something that will hold up when you file for divorce." I knew she was right. A few expense reports and a silhouette through frosted glass would not be enough. Derek had money for good lawyers. He would spin everything, make me look paranoid, jealous, unstable. "I need to keep going," I said. "Just a little longer." Meredith sighed. "Be careful, Sophie. You are playing with fire." I know, but fire was all I had left. The second week brought new challenges. Amber had started paying attention to me. I first noticed it on Monday morning. I looked up from my desk to find her watching me from across the room. Her blue eyes narrowed slightly. When our gazes met, she did not look away. She just smiled, slow and unsettling. By Wednesday, she had started asking questions. "You are the new designer, right?" she said, appearing at my desk without warning. "Sophie something Brennan," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Sophie Brennan." "Where did you work?" before I gave her the rehearsed answer. "Freelance, various clients, nothing she could easily verify." She nodded slowly, but something in her expression told me she was not satisfied. "You look familiar," she said. "Have we met before? I do not think so." She studied my face for a long moment, then shrugged and walked away. But I knew she would be back. The questions continued throughout the week. Where I lived, whether I was married, what brought me to Caldwell Marketing. I answered carefully, sticking to the story Meredith and I had crafted. But it was not just the questions. Amber began making my work life difficult. Projects that should have gone to senior designers landed on my desk with impossible deadlines. She criticized my work in front of colleagues, pointing out flaws that did not exist. She copied Brian on emails that made me look incompetent. I bore it all in silence. Getting fired now would mean losing access to everything. I needed more time. One afternoon, near the end of the second week, I was waiting for the elevator when Derek joined me. My heart stopped. We were alone. He glanced at me, then did a double take. His brow furrowed slightly. "You look familiar," he said. "Have we met before?" I kept my expression neutral, my voice flat. "I do not think so, sir. I just started in the marketing department." He nodded slowly, his eyes still searching my face. There was something there, some flicker of recognition, but it did not fully form. "Well, welcome to the team," he said finally. The elevator doors opened. We stepped inside together, stood side by side as the floors ticked past. He had no idea he was standing next to his wife. When the doors opened on the lobby, he nodded to me and walked away without another word. I exhaled slowly, my hands trembling. This could not last forever. Eventually, he would see through the disguise. Eventually, Amber would figure out why I seemed familiar. I needed to act soon, but I could not have predicted how soon or how explosive that moment would be. It happened on my 18th day at Caldwell Marketing. The morning started like any other. Derek had a major presentation scheduled, a pitch to a potential client that could bring in millions in new revenue. The entire office was buzzing with nervous energy. Amber was in overdrive, rushing between Derek's office and the conference room, carrying folders, making phone calls, coordinating every detail. She barely acknowledged anyone else, too focused on making sure everything was perfect for him. I stayed at my desk, working on a design project Brian had assigned, but I kept one eye on the hallway on the flurry of activity around Derek's office. Around 11, Brian asked me to bring some materials to the conference room. Mock-ups the design team had created for the presentation. I gathered the folders and made my way down the hall. The conference room was on the same floor as Derek's office, which meant passing by Amber's desk. As I approached, I noticed something on her desk. A water bottle. Clear plastic, half full, with a blue cap. There was a small label on it that read D in handwritten script. Derek's water. She had labeled it. Something about that detail made my stomach turn. The possessiveness of it. The intimacy. I delivered the materials to the conference room and started back toward my desk. My throat was dry, and I realized I had not had anything to drink in hours. The stress of the past weeks had been taking its toll. As I passed Amber's desk, I noticed she was not there. She had gone into the conference room with Derek. Her desk was unattended. The water bottle sat there, condensation beading on the plastic. In any normal office, taking a sip of water from a bottle on someone's desk would be nothing. A minor breach of etiquette at most. Co-workers shared drinks, food, coffee all the time. I did not think. I just picked it up, unscrewed the cap, and took a drink. The water was cold and refreshing. I took one long sip and started to set the bottle back down. That is when Amber appeared. She came around the corner fast, her heels clicking against the floor like gunshots. Her eyes locked onto me, then onto the bottle in my hand. Her face transformed. I had never seen someone's expression change so completely, so rapidly. One moment she was the polished professional secretary. The next she was something else entirely. Her lips pulled back. Her eyes went wide with fury. She crossed the distance between us in 3 strides. And then she slapped me. The impact was shocking. Her palm connected with my cheek hard enough to snap my head to the side. The crack of it echoed through the open office space. "That is mine," she screamed. "Do not you dare touch what belongs to me." I stumbled backward, my hand flying to my face. The skin burned where she had struck me. I could already feel it swelling. The entire office had stopped. Every conversation died. Every keyboard went silent. Dozens of eyes stared at us. Amber was still screaming, "Who do you think you are? That water is from D." He gave it to me. Only me. She was shaking her composure, completely shattered. This was not about water. This was about territory, about ownership, about a woman who had convinced herself that Derek belonged to her. Leah rushed over, putting herself between us. "Amber, stop! What are you doing?" Marcus was calling security. Tommy stood frozen at his desk, mouth open, but I barely registered any of them. Something had shifted inside me. The slap had done more than sting my cheek. It had burned away the last of my hesitation, the last of my fear. I straightened up, looked directly at Amber, and I spoke clearly so everyone could hear. "You said D gave this to you. D as in Derek Caldwell." Amber's rage flickered, replaced momentarily by confusion. "So what everyone knows, he is mine." There it was, the admission, in front of the entire marketing department. I reached up slowly and removed my glasses. I had been wearing them for 18 days straight, and my eyes took a moment to adjust. Then I ran my fingers through my hair, pushing it back from my face the way I always used to wear it. Before the dye, before the disguise, "Let me introduce myself properly," I said. "My name is Sophie Caldwell. Derek is my husband." The silence that followed was absolute. Amber's face drained of color. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Leah gasped. Marcus swore under his breath. Somewhere behind me, I heard a phone drop. I stood there in the middle of that frozen moment, my cheek throbbing, my heart pounding, and I felt something I had not expected. Relief. The secret was out. The mask was gone. And now everyone, including Amber, including Derek, would have to face the truth. As if summoned by the chaos, Derek burst through the conference room doors. Someone must have texted him. His face was panicked, eyes wild, searching the crowd until they landed on me, on his wife, standing in the middle of his office, with his mistress's handprint on her face. "Sophie," his voice cracked. What are you doing here?" I met his gaze steadily. "I wanted to see who you really are, Derek. And now I know." For a moment, nobody moved. The tableau held me with my red cheek and revealed identity, Amber pale and trembling. Derek frozen in the doorway with his perfect suit and crumbling composure. Then everyone started talking at once. Brian emerged from his office demanding to know what was happening. Leah was trying to explain, her words tumbling over each other. Security guards appeared at the elevator. Phones were buzzing everywhere as news spread through the building like wildfire, but I remained focused on Derek. He crossed the room toward me, his hands raised as if approaching a wild animal. "Sophie, please, let me explain." Explain what I asked. My voice was calm, eerily. "So, the hotel receipts, the dinners for two, the late nights that were not about work, it is not what you think." I gestured toward Amber, who was now slumped against her desk, mascara starting to run. "She just slapped your wife over a water bottle because she thought it was proof that you belonged to her. Tell me, Derek, what exactly should I be thinking?" He had no answer. His mouth opened and closed. The confident CEO, the man who could charm any client and close any deal, stood speechless in front of his employees. Amber found her voice. "Dee, tell her. Tell her it is not true." But Derek said nothing. His silence was louder than any confession. I pulled out my phone, scrolled to Meredith's contact, and pressed call. She answered immediately. "Meredith," I said clearly, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Please prepare the divorce papers. I have all the evidence I need." The words hit Derek like physical blows. His face crumpled. "Sophie, no. Please. 7 years. We can work through this. I made a mistake. I love you." I looked at him. This man I had shared my life with. This man who had brought me flowers every Friday while sleeping with his secretary. This man who had kissed me goodbye every morning before coming here to betray me. "You do not get to say that word anymore," I told him. "Love does not lie. Love does not betray. And love certainly does not stand there while another woman slaps your wife. He reached for my hand. I stepped back. I turned to Amber. She looked broken. Her perfect facade destroyed. Part of me wanted to hate her. She had knowingly participated in this. She had been cruel, vindictive, territorial. But another part of me saw something else. Another woman deceived by Derek Caldwell. I do not blame you entirely, I said to her. He lied to both of us. He made you promises he never intended to keep. Amber's lower lip trembled. He said he was going to leave you. He said you did not understand him, that you did not care about him. And you believed him. She nodded miserably. I stepped closer, and she flinched, perhaps expecting me to slap her back. But I just met her eyes. Remember this moment, I said, when you are in my position someday, and you will be. Because a man who cheats with you will cheat on you. He does not change. He just finds a new target. I collected my things from my desk, my bag, my phone charger, a small plant Leah had given me on my third day. Brian approached, looking deeply uncomfortable. Sophie, I had no idea. I am so sorry. You did not know, I said. None of you did. That was the point. Leah hugged me, tears streaming down her face. I am so sorry, she whispered. I should have said something. We all knew something was wrong, but we never... It is not your fault. None of you owed me the truth. That was his job. Marcus caught up to me at the elevator. You are the bravest person I have ever met, he said. What you just did in there, I do not think I could ever do that. I managed a small smile. You would be surprised what you can do when you have no choice. The elevator doors opened. I stepped inside, pressed the button for the lobby, and watched as the third floor disappeared from view. Derek did not follow me. He stayed in that office surrounded by his employees, his reputation in ruins, his secrets laid bare. I walked out of Caldwell Marketing for the last time. The sun was setting, painting the Chicago skyline in shades of orange and gold. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, breathing in the cool evening air. My cheek still throbbed where Amber had struck me. My hands were shaking. My mind was a whirlwind of emotions. But underneath it all, beneath the pain and the shock and the grief, I felt something unexpected. Freedom. The lies were over. The pretending was done. I no longer had to wonder what my husband was doing when I was not around. I knew now. And that knowledge, as painful as it was, had set me free. I drove to Meredith's apartment instead of going home. I could not face that house. Not yet. Maybe not ever. She was waiting at the door when I arrived, a glass of wine already poured. You did it, she said. You actually did it. I took the wine. My hands were still trembling. Yes, I did. And she hugged me while I finally cried. The next few weeks were a blur of legal documents, emotional turmoil, and the slow, painful process of disentangling my life from Derek's. I stayed with Meredith for the first week. Her spare bedroom became my sanctuary, a place where I could fall apart in private. And I did fall apart, repeatedly. Sometimes over big things like signing the initial divorce paperwork. Sometimes over small things like finding one of Derek's shirts in my overnight bag. But I also started to rebuild. Meredith helped me assemble the evidence. We had the expense reports, the hotel receipts, the company calendar showing Derek's suspicious travel patterns coinciding with Amber's personal days. We had testimony from former colleagues who were willing to speak about what they had witnessed. And we had video footage. It turned out that Caldwell Marketing had security cameras throughout the building, including in the hallways outside Derek's office. The footage clearly showed Derek and Amber in intimate positions multiple times over the past 2 years, holding hands, embracing, kissing. When Meredith showed me the footage during our preparation meeting, I had to look away. There was also footage of Amber slapping me, high-definition, clear audio, her screaming that I had touched what was hers, my measured response revealing my identity. That video alone would have been enough to sink Derek's case, but we had so much more. Derek tried to contact me constantly in those first weeks. Phone calls that went to voicemail, texts that I deleted without reading, emails that Meredith intercepted. He sent flowers. I donated them to a nursing home. He sent jewelry. I returned it to the store. He showed up at Meredith's apartment building once at 2 a.m, drunk and crying. The doorman called the police. Eventually, he stopped trying to reach me directly and started communicating through his lawyers instead. Amber was a surprise witness. 2 weeks after the confrontation, she reached out to Meredith. Derek had fired her the day after my identity was revealed. Officially, it was a restructuring decision. Unofficially, everyone knew he was trying to distance himself from the scandal. Amber was angry, humiliated, and willing to talk. We met at a coffee shop in Lincoln Park. She looked different without the perfect makeup, the designer clothes. She looked younger, more vulnerable. He promised me everything she said, stirring her cappuccino without drinking it. He said his marriage was over, that they were just staying together for appearances. He said as soon as the timing was right, he would leave her and we would be together. How long, I asked. She could not meet my eyes. 2 years. 2 years of promises. I let that sink in. 2 years. All those Friday night flowers. All those Sunday morning omelets. All those I love yous. I am not asking you to forgive me, Amber continued. I know what I did was wrong. I knew he was married, and I did not care. I told myself it did not matter, because he did not really love you. She finally looked up. Her eyes were red-rimmed. But watching you stand there after I hit you, she said, watching you calmly take off those glasses and tell everyone who you really were, I realized something. What he never talked about you that way. Like you were nothing. But you are not nothing. You are the strongest person I have ever seen. And I was a fool. The court date arrived faster than I expected. We filed for divorce on grounds of adultery, with extensive documentation of Derek's infidelity. His lawyers tried every tactic in the book. They claimed the evidence was obtained improperly. They argued that my undercover employment was a form of entrapment. They painted me as an unstable, jealous wife who had orchestrated an elaborate scheme to destroy her husband. None of it worked. The judge reviewed the evidence carefully. The expense reports submitted as business documents. The security footage obtained through proper discovery. Amber's testimony delivered quietly but firmly. She described 2 years of their affair. The secret lunches, the hotel rooms, the promises Derek made about leaving me, the increasingly possessive way he behaved, giving her jewelry, perfume, the water bottle with his initial on it. She also described the moment everything fell apart. I knew she was his wife the second she took off those glasses, Amber told the court. And I knew my life was over. Not because of her. Because I finally saw Derek for who he really is. A man who will say anything to get what he wants. Derek's lawyer tried to discredit her testimony, but it was futile. Amber had text messages, photos, a paper trail that proved everything. The judgment came down on a Thursday afternoon. I was awarded 60% of our marital assets, including the house in Naperville. Derek was ordered to pay my legal fees and a substantial settlement for emotional distress. But more than the money, more than the property, I got something far more valuable. I got my life back. Derek's company never recovered from the scandal. Several major clients withdrew their accounts within weeks of the story breaking. The board of directors forced him to step down as CEO. Last I heard, he was living in a small apartment in the suburbs trying to rebuild his reputation. Amber left Chicago entirely. She moved to Portland, started over. We are not friends exactly, but we are not enemies either. She texts me sometimes. Short messages. Hope you are doing well. Thinking of you. One time she sent a photo of herself at a farmer's market smiling genuinely for what looked like the first time in years. I always respond, because we both learned the same lesson even if we learned it differently. Some people are not who they seem, and the only way to survive is to become stronger than the lies they told us. A year has passed since I walked out of Caldwell Marketing with a slap mark on my face and my dignity intact. I live in a different place now. A small apartment in Lincoln Square with big windows that let in the morning light. There is a coffee shop on the corner where the barista knows my order. A yoga studio down the street where I go 3 times a week. A farmer's market on Saturdays where I buy fresh flowers for my kitchen table. I sold the house in Naperville. I could not stay there. Too many memories. Too many lies embedded in the walls. The new owners are a young family with 2 kids and a dog. They seem happy. I hope they are. I still work as a graphic designer, but differently now. I took on new clients, built new relationships. My work has gotten better, more confident. Maybe because I am more confident. Maybe because I stopped shrinking myself to fit into someone else's idea of who I should be. The healing was not linear. There were setbacks. Dark nights when the anger felt overwhelming. Mornings when getting out of bed seemed impossible. Moments when I questioned everything, wondered if I had done the right thing, wondered if I had destroyed my life over a water bottle. But I kept going, one foot in front of the other, one day at a time. I started therapy 6 months ago. A woman named Dr. Reeves who listens without judgment and asks questions that make me think. She helped me understand that Derek's betrayal was not a reflection of my worth. It was a reflection of his character. I reconnected with old friends, people Derek had slowly pushed out of my life over the years. I did not realize how isolated I had become until I started rebuilding those connections. I adopted a cat, a ginger tabby named Maple who was found behind a restaurant and nursed back to health by the shelter. She sleeps on my pillow and judges me silently when I eat ice cream for dinner. I love her unreasonably, and I started dating again, slowly, carefully. There is a man named Thomas. We met at a book club Meredith dragged me to. He is kind and funny, and does not make promises he cannot keep. We have been seeing each other for 3 months. I told him everything about Derek, about what happened, and he listened without flinching. I am not ready to rush into anything I told him. He smiled. I am not going anywhere. We will see. But for the first time in a long time, the future feels like something to look forward to, instead of something to fear. Meredith asked me recently if I regretted going undercover at Derek's company, if I would do it again knowing how much pain it would cause. I thought about it for a long time. Yes, I finally said. I would do it again. Not because I enjoyed it. Not because it was easy, but because the truth mattered more than my comfort. I needed to know who my husband really was, and once I knew, I could finally let him go. That is the thing about secrets. They have power only as long as they stay hidden. Once they are exposed, they lose their grip on you. Derek's secrets controlled my life for 7 years. The doubts, the suspicions, the constant wondering if I was enough, if I was too much, if I was seeing things that were not there. But when Amber slapped me over that water bottle, when she screamed that I had touched what was hers, she shattered more than my dignity. She shattered the illusion. And in the wreckage, I found myself. If you are watching this, and you are in a relationship where something feels wrong, I want you to know that your instincts matter. That voice inside you, the one that whispers that things are not as they seem, is worth listening to. You do not have to do what I did. You do not have to go undercover or confront anyone publicly, or turn your life upside down. But you do have to trust yourself, because you deserve a love that does not require secrets. A partner who is the same person whether you are watching or not. A life built on truth instead of comfortable lies. And if you discover that the person you trusted has been deceiving you, know this their betrayal is not your failure. You did not cause it. You did not deserve it. And you will survive it. I am living proof. The slap that was meant to put me in my place ended up setting me free. The woman who thought she owned my husband helped me realize that I'd been sharing him all along. And the moment I took off those glasses and said my real name was the moment I reclaimed my life. Some stories do not have happy endings in the traditional sense. Derek and I are not reconciled. There was no dramatic redemption, no fairy tale reunion. But I am happy. Genuinely, deeply, peacefully happy. And that, I think, is the best ending of all. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever trusted your instincts when something felt off in a relationship? How did it turn out? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else who is going through something similar. If this story resonated with you, please take a moment to hit that like button. It helps more than you know. And if you are not already subscribed to this channel, consider joining our community. We share stories about resilience, truth, and finding strength in the hardest moments. Do not forget to share this video with someone who might need to hear it today. You never know who is struggling in silence. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. And remember, You are stronger than you know. You are worth more than anyone's lies, and your truth, no matter how painful, will always set you free. Take care of yourselves. I will see you in the next story.